Today may be a little bit light because of ECC. There's a few folks I know are not going to be here. I'm sure Tam is not going to be here. I doubt Griff is going to be here. And I don't know about Zeptimus. So why don't we dive in, and then we can let's dive in with just starting off with the questions. So actually, before we do that, Risha, do you want to just introduce yourself? Give a quick background.
Yeah, sounds good. So I reached out to Gideon a couple days ago, asking if I could play a bigger role on Sampo. I learned more about it in the orientation call last week. My background is in industrial engineering, and I want to go more into the token engineering space. But I've been just working in the fintech space myself for the past five years, and have taken on a host of roles from product management to operations to even business development. And at one point was the leader of a B2B business within a firm called Wealthsimple. So that's just a little bit of background on myself, and just really excited to get to know you guys and help out wherever I can.
Cool, thank you. Well, welcome again. And so what we're going to do is we always start off with somebody reading the Sampo mission. And Enti, do you want to do it today?
Yeah, sure. So the Sampo Working Group develops and grows the value of the economic layer of the token engineering commons. It aligns this microeconomy with the TEC mission and the collective success and individual benefits of its token holders.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, I always just like grounding what we're doing in that mission every day. So let's start off with just a check-in question. What I thought would be good is, rather than focusing on like the specifics of like economics and like the work we're doing, I just wanted to do a quick check-in on like how are you feeling about these sample calls, and is there anything we can do to make them better? So I'll start with let's start with Nate. Can you take it?
Yeah. So what's the original question? Sorry. How are you feeling about these sample calls, and what could we do to make it better? I actually really like it. I think that I think it's a good time. I think it's we cover everything pretty succinctly. As things start to build up and we start to have more work that needs to be done, I believe that kind of focusing on the different areas, because Sampo covers a lot of initiatives right now in the economic layer, and so when it comes to TEC utility, I think having kind of more dedicated times for these initiatives would be really nice. Maybe even like hack sessions, especially when it comes to the investment strategies on my end, what I'm working on would be really nice to have as well. But overall, I think it's really good. It covers everything that we need to cover, and we can have separate calls if need be. So, but yeah, that's how I feel about it. I think it's going really well. So I'll pass it over to Inti.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I feel the same. I like them. They feel like they're really productive. I feel we end up covering everything we need to cover, and in that same note, we kind of already have been having a few separate calls for more specific stuff. But as far as this one, I think it's great. I'll pass it over to CryptoSec.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm feeling good about these calls. I think that we're slowly starting to make progress in identifying like a mission and scope for what this group is really focused on, and really identifying a good, sustainable system or model that can revolve around the token to help TEC achieve its goals of being a powerhouse for token economists to both learn and find each other and share good resources, and also get connected with projects looking for that type of expertise. So I think that our conversations do cover a very big, a very broad range of topics, but we're slowly starting to refine and narrow down the scope.
Do you want to pass it to somebody?
Sure, I passed it to Bear.
Yeah, thank you, CryptoSec. Yeah, I don't think I have much to say, to be honest. I think it's great. For me, it's one of the most organized and structured calls in the TEC, and that makes it really productive. I think time is really well used. So, yeah, I really don't have any feedback at the moment. So I'll just pass it to who is missing? Jean?
Thanks, Bear. Yeah, I would just concur with Nate that the project call is good, and perhaps just having an expansion of the individual initiatives to have their own longer calls would be a good idea at some point. Other than that, yeah, the call is great. And pass to Rico.
Okay, I guess I can take a stab at it. So far, I've really enjoyed how the mission is restated at the beginning of each call, and I really like that everyone's input is gathered right before we get into more specific things. So it feels very collaborative and always focused on kind of staying on the same page. I'll pass it on to. Guess, is there anybody left?
I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just give a quick thing. I mean, I feel like these calls are going well, but if anybody feels like I didn't really want to like maybe I have something I don't feel comfortable saying in front of the whole group or whatever, just reach out to me, drop me a note, and let me know if there are things you think we could do better. I think that the point about the sub teams, I would encourage, like, if you're part of one of those groups and you feel like it's, it would be good to get together, just do it. Like, you don't need permission, just do it. I think the only thing I would ask is, just in the spirit of Sampo, let's not meet just to meet. Let's try to do as much async as possible. There's so many meetings in the TEC, and like adding more to that just for the sake of meeting I don't think that's good use of people's time. So, I'm a big fan of like meeting when, I think this weekly meeting is good. We should be doing that just to make sure that we're all in sync. And then the sub teams, like, if, just use Doodle and like find time to get together when it's really needed to move things forward. That's my recommendation, at least. Okay, so I wanted to just touch on. So we've got a few things to talk about today. Just some quick updates, and then we're going to go into how we're thinking about structuring bounties in Sampo. Bear's done a whole bunch of work talking with Auntie and me about that, and it'd be great to get some feedback. And then Nate's going to kind of like just update us and get some feedback on the like where we take the Treasury Policy. He's done a ton of work on this. So the updates. If you look on the screen, I'm going to click on this. we've done, we're going to be doing roles. Like I'm a big believer in separating roles from souls, right? What do I mean by that? Is like, let's create sockets where certain types of work belongs, that, serves the mission. And people can come in and they can take, all of a role. They can take part of a role. Let's not try to like tie a particular person to a particular role, um, over time, right? But let's identify the roles that we know are going to be needed in order to move this work forward. And then, like, if I get hit by a bus, here it is, right? So rather than going into like blow by blow what each of these are, I'm just gonna like cover the major categories, and then I would encourage we do this async. If you have a moment, like go into this doc and leave some comments if you have questions or think there's things that are missing or things that it's too much here. So what I see this the Sampo steward role as being primarily focused on these things, outcomes, like making sure that all of the work that we do here is really outcomes oriented, and that those outcomes align with the goals of the Sampo mission, but then more importantly, the goals of the TEC mission, right? Those are linked. Those are linked in our mission. And then strategy, making sure that that we're going someplace, right? That makes sense. And some of that includes like advice process. That's a big thing in TEC. So it's like making sure that as we develop our strategies, they're mixing kind of like short-term and long-term objectives, and that we're getting feedback and governance from the rest of the community. Communication, see this role of the steward as being kind of a chief spokesperson for Sampo in the community, the broader community. Another big thing is people. Like, I see a big part of my role is like recruiting and encouraging and getting engagement from folks around the community. And also, for people who want it, like coaching and kind of like peer coaching, because I can always use help too, right? So kind of peer-to-peer coaching. And then fiduciary. So it's like fiduciary, we kind of are the fiduciary signal for this commons and this community. And so how do we as a group make sure that the fiduciary responsibilities of the stewards and the commons overall is being clearly and adequately being represented? And so there's some sub roles, responsibilities that roll up into that, and those are all here. So I'm going to leave this. You can get to this document by going to the Sampo meetings, which is on the homepage. You can always get, if you go to just to like a navigational thing, you can. There are a couple ways of getting to that document, but that in the key documents, the meetings is always right here, and so that at least we talked about this today, and you can get to it that way. So just for time, I'm going to like skip a bunch of like feedback right now, but I really do encourage you to, if you do have some time, take a look at that and provide some feedback. Consulting intake update. So consulting intake service is now got a name, Token Engineering Request Board. It's not like a brand name that I'm expecting to see on like Coke cans or anything like that. It's not the sexiest name, but it does describe what we're doing, and we decided not to like get super fancy on this, just keep it very clear. So we've done, Tam has done a ton of work, and I've been helping her, and Jeff Emmett has been helping out, advising as well, which is so great. And so what we boiled this down to is really simple. This is just like the essence of a minimum viable product, right? Basically, what's going to happen is there's a form that people will fill out. People who need token engineering help will fill out this form. Tam is working on the questions. We're going to keep them probably pretty simple in the beginning. And not too structured. Like over time, I see that data that we're gathering becoming more structured, and probably a little bit more quantitative. But in the beginning, it's going to be pretty unstructured text and fairly qualitative. And that information will come in. NT is working on what that tool is going to be, the form submission tool. That data, that information will then end up going on the TEC forum in discourse. And we're probably going to be creating a new category for it. And it will just go up there, and then we'll be working with a handful of token engineering firms to try to get them to pay attention to this stuff and look for interesting projects in this place. It's going to take a while to get people into the habit of wanting to look for projects there, especially when they're so busy. So I'm not expecting wild success on this. I think we should all be very circumspect about that. Like, this is not going to be some gigantic service. Probably between now and the end of the year, right? We're just going to be learning a lot as we go. But I'm also hoping to be able to tap some of the folks from the Token Engineering Academy to come in and interact with those posts and maybe like the ones that look most interesting and use that as kind of some very simple curation. So that's it for this first release, and then we'll be iterating on it and doing a next release. This one is called Alpha 1, and Alpha 2 will probably be in October sometime. So any questions on that before we move on? Tam will probably do a more in-depth look at this next week and get some feedback. But any questions at this point or comments? Nope. Okay. The new time. Bear, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, thank you, Gideon. Yeah, it's just like a reminder. I wrote a post on the Discord channel just letting you guys know that we're trying to find a new date and time for the weekly call. So here's the link if you want to open the doodle and just add your availability to see like which time could work better for us. And yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, thanks, Bear. All right, so let's go. Let's jump into the discussion about bounty. Bear, you're going to lead that too, right? Do you want me to link to that document?
Yes, if you could open that one. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, so as Gideon said before, we've been working with NT and myself in trying to figure out the best process to start working on this style of bounty-based contributions. This is something that we believe it's going to be really important and allow a lot of permissionless work happening in the working group. So this is basically, just like a first document where we're trying to give this process some structure. It's open for adding any comments, any feedback that you would like to add. Please feel free to do so. We can just maybe give a quick review on this, and then maybe all the feedback can be done async, so we can keep doing the other stuff we have left. But so basically, it's I think it's important that each bounty that is created has at least basic structure of defining what problem is it like trying to solve, what's the objective of the bounty, defining that problem with detail, and something that is done in the TC. That's a really good habit of the advice process. How big is the problem? who's gonna get affected by this if it has a big impact around the community. And then thinking about the possible outcomes that the bounty could bring, like different hypotheses of the possible results that this could bring. And building on that, a strategy, right? Like, how are you going to do it? Who's the people in charge of doing it? If it's just one person doing it, do you need a team? How long is it going to take you? What are your deadlines? What resources are you going to need? Are you going to need some funding maybe? So making all that part of the strategy. And then also, knowing how are you going to measure progress and being transparent and accountable about it. So these are things that are still being worked on, trying to figure out the best way to do. But those 6 areas we think are important to consider when having a bounty. And then for bounties, at least on this initial stage, we think that these 4 roles would be important to include. A project manager as like the head of the bounty, responsible of specifying the bounty, like the different tasks underneath, doing time estimates, doing all the leading and all the planning for the bounty. That would be in charge. That would be in charge of the project in the project manager. Then contributors would be anyone involved at any level in the project. So it could be the same project manager, all the assignees. That's kind of like the word that Clarity uses for bounties. So it's just basically the person actually fulfilling the task. That's how they call it, an assignee. So that would be some other kind of contributor, the reviewer, the advisor, anyone involved would be a contributor. Then you have the assignee, that's what I just mentioned, fulfilling the tasks of the bounty, and they are the people eligible for payments. And you have then the reviewer. This person will be in charge of, making sure that things are being accountable, that the project is actually completing all the objectives that it was promising. And at the end, it also approves the payments for the different contributors. Then we're considering these 2 types of bounties, proactive and retroactive. Retroactive ones are more like volunteering type of bounties that people just with an idea or when they see a problem, they can propose a solution for that. That's still like in progress, so I think that's gonna take a little more time to figure out the best process for that. So right now we're focusing more on proactive based on actual needs and projects that Sampo is taking on currently. So this is basically just some explanation. Maybe I don't have to go into much detail on how to, for example, set the rewards for each bounty. The meaning, we're trying to use this concept of overage that I think it's really interesting to have more flexibility for timing. So for bounties, we would be doing like an hourly wage. So based on how long would it take a task to be completed, you would be having the possibility to add some extra hours or some extra time if it's needed to be completed, right? Then also some transparency and accountability measures that I think it would be important to consider when dealing with bounties. And yeah, I think that would be basically it. I don't know, Guillaume, do you think I'm missing anything else? Do you want me to maybe go deeper into these two things, or should we just leave it more into async feedback?
I think we have some time today, and I think this is going to be, a lot of the work in Sampo is going to be bounty driven. So I think it's worth spending a little bit of time on it. I think one thing I would like to call out, just like a couple things actually. One is, if you look across the TEC, there's kind of this informal hourly rate of like 21 DI per hour that a lot of the working groups have, 21, 22 per hour that a lot of the working groups seem to have standardized on. I don't know how that happened, but like kind of like across the board. So for bounties, we thought like, well, it's probably not right to use that same 21 base because the 21 base is like for people who have like a fixed period of time and it's like a recurring agreement, economic agreement. This is more free and more free from both sides, but it's less reliable, right? So it makes sense to. I think we did it. We bumped it up by a third. That's what the 28 per hour is. We may reserve the ability later to drive that up for particularly demanding types of work. Like if it's somebody doing smart contract stuff, like we may have to push that up, right? So we're not locking in on that rate, but I just wanted to explain some kind of the basis of that. The other thing in the bear it's not in this document yet, but that NT was talking about earlier today is that we probably need to include something in this about the tails, right? Like the ongoing tail of any project, right? Everything you do has like some kind of operational debt. So for example, this is how this came up, like NT was talking about our token gating project, right? Like seems simple. Like once we make the decision and we launch, it's like we're done, right? No, actually, like somebody, we've got to make sure that people, that the TC has like access to those accounts. So it's not just one person's hands. You probably need like somebody there to know how to use that thing and be able to like change it or do things over time. So that's probably one thing that we just talked about just like a couple hours before this call. So it's not in here yet, but like the tail, like how do you manage the tail and putting that in proactively so that we don't just end up creating a bunch of operational debt down the road. I think that's mostly it, but should we open it up to, I think it'd be good to get some thoughts or feedback on this or questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone that has any question, any feedback, please feel free to share.
I guess one question is, does this make sense to people? Understandable?
Yeah, so I guess it makes sense. I was just curious about the, when it comes to how detailed each bounty is going to be. Is it going to be priced out by project or priced out by like task within projects? And do we have people who are going to set the parameters? Like when submitting a proposal to be done proactively, should we have like a template to follow when it comes to saying this is how much we expect them to have for this type of work and so on?
Great question. Bear, do you want to answer that?
Yes. Yeah. So right now we're considering that part of the tasks for the project manager would be to do an estimate for each task on the bounty or on the project. And this estimate would be like based on time, on how many hours would that task take to be completed. And then you would get like this estimate for every task, and you would calculate the reward based on that for that task. And then like the total sum of the tasks within that project would be like the total bounty amount for let's say that specific project. So that's kind of like the idea. And then what you said about the template, yes, I think that's also we're gonna also start working on to have some kind of template that can give you like the key parts that the bounty should include. So there's like a guideline over there. So yeah, that's something I'm planning on working on really soon. And yeah, I don't know if you had any other question.
Let me just show an example. This is one. So this is something that's live. Like we're literally working on this week to figure out how to. Like last week we figured out how to do payments for salaries. For people who are getting ongoing payment, and this week is bounty stuff. Bounty is a little bit more complicated, but here's an example based on a project that NT is working on. So you can see that here. So like. These are the subtasks. This is the project, and underneath this are the the tasks that roll up into this project. So you can see that this is the summary, but if you go down into this one here, which is reach out to a couple of customers to get feedback on both token gating tools. So we're looking at Collabland and guild.xyz. And so you can see the NT's done an estimate of like probably 3 hours total to like get all this feedback and just make sense of it. And then there's a buffer here that is just 30 minutes. So he can basically, 3 hours, no problem. If he's gonna go beyond that, like we're trying to figure out where we draw the line. Like, does it make sense to have to go to the reviewer? See, I'm the reviewer on this. Does he have to come to me for 30 minutes? I don't know. Like, that's probably getting a little bit too detailed. But like, you can imagine on a bigger project where it's like a 10 to 15 hour project and somebody's going over by 4 to 5 hours. Yeah, probably need to get the reviewer. So that's the kind of the next level of detail on that. But you can kind of see here, like, this is the next thing. This is like how to post a recommendation on the forum and a comment. And so this doesn't seem like this is in the right place, but let me go back. So pricing, like questions about pricing and support for these tool providers. This is another one. It's 2 hours. So when you roll it all up, the total project for token gating is 10 hours, and then like an overage or buffer of 1 hour and 30 minutes. And so I am the reviewer for. So does that make sense? And does that answer your question, Nate, about how most of it? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Again, we're in the process of making sense of this and trying to like tune our policy here. So now's a great time to provide input.
Just wanted to say that I think that we've been making really great progress and work with this, particularly because we have to have in mind that unlike other working groups, bounties on Sampo are probably more like projects instead of like they're not as granular bounties as we have on many other working groups on the TC. So like I believe the document Bear has been putting together is really great for what's probably coming up for Sampo.
Just a quick question for me as well. How do projects actually get approved? So say there's a list of 10 that various people have come up with. How do we decide which ones we'll actually do and then therefore provide bounties for?
Great question.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Yeah, I think that would be more of what we're also thinking on planning, but maybe a little more in the future of retroactive kind of bounties, like projects that people have, and how are we gonna choose which one is viable, and how are we gonna measure the impact they have. So I think that's gonna be because I think it's gonna be a little more complicated figuring that out. So yeah, we're probably gonna focus on that maybe a little in the coming weeks, I would say, maybe months. I don't know.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll add one thing on that. So right now, the proactive ones are the ones, and this is from the perspective of Sampo. Proactive, that means that Sampo has promised to do these things. So if you go to, the home and then roadmap, you'll see these are literally what we promised in our funding proposal. Work with Transparency Working Group to build a real-time snapshot of all TC treasuries. So that's done, right? All of these were just kind of like we ticked off. We did all of the ones we said we would do in June. And now we're working on these. It's going to be tight, but I think we'll get through most of them. There'll be like probably one of these that we won't, or we'll be very close on these. But you'll see this defines all of the projects that have been approved. How did they get approved? Because they were part of our funding proposal. So, as Bear said, the part where it's not proactive but retroactive. We got to think that through. And my guess is that part of that's going to be, like if it's like 300-400 or 300 or 400 die, then it's like, okay, we'll and if it seems like there's enough energy going and it seems like it's supporting all of the stuff that we've signed up for, then we'll probably just say, yeah, we'll do it. But if it's a sizable proposal, then we'll probably need to take it to conviction voting, right? And so that's, we'll, because we're starting to think of Sampo as more like a birthing ground, like, that process will be, if it's sizable, we'll probably need to take a conviction voting and get feedback and signal from the community. But like Bear said, we don't know yet what it will look like. That's something we'll be working through the next month or so. It's not the highest priority right now.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And welcome to, I don't know how to say your name, Lavi. Welcome to the call. Can you tell us how to say your name and just say hi? Or not, you're welcome to just sit in on the call. So this is the Sampo Working Group. This is a group that's focused on the economic layer of the token engineering commons. So, okay, let's, if there's no other comments right now, feel free to go into the document and add comments on your own later. And with that, let's turn it over to Nate. And Nate, you want to take it away and dive into your questions about the Treasury Policy?
Yeah, so shifting gears here from Bounties to Treasury. So this is one of those things, if you haven't been following along or haven't looked at this Treasury Policy document, I posted a link in the Sampo channel. Feel free at any point to comment or ask questions or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of go over what I've put out so far in this just kind of very, very rough draft, and ask you guys some questions and get some feedback here in person, because I do think that right now my mind is on not only this policy document, but researching investment strategies and what is the future of managing a treasury as we move forward. And so the Treasury Policy document is just set out to kind of just set the stage for what our purpose is, what we intend to do with this treasury management, and what we plan.
Hey, Michael, it's
Sorry.
fine.
Hello, Lavi. You're not on mute, Lavi. So, but if you'd like to introduce yourself, you please feel free to. All right.
Lavi, I'm going to put you on mute just for right now, but feel free to message me if you would like to be unmuted.
Thank you, Gideon. So within the Treasury Policy document, we have our statement of purpose, our vision, which sets out, what we intend to do. And then here we go over kind of the Treasury overview. What kind of are the issues that we're facing? It's really difficult to plan a treasury system, modeling other DAOs, especially because most other DAOs have a consistent form of revenue coming in. And at the moment, we do not have that. And so as we start to develop revenue generating practices within the TEC, this document will need to evolve with it. But out here, we're just trying to outline kind of the management goals, the operational considerations, and an overview of the DeFi mechanisms that we're going to explore. And so if you have any feedback on any of these things, I would really, really appreciate your comments. As you can see, Gideon and I have gone tit for tat on a lot of the details of this document, and it will continue to be revised throughout this week. And I hope by the end of this week we can get at least a forum post out of this, and kind of present it to the community. So with that being said, there are a couple of things that I really want to kind of capture from you all here in Sampo. and get your thoughts on it. Because as we start to develop the roadmap and finish this policy and go on to our investment strategy and our first funding proposal, there are some principles, and this is what I really kind of want to get at, is a question that I would like to pass around to all of you is, what are the principles that will serve as a guiding light when we're developing a model for treasury management? Like, what are the things that you think are the most important principles to consider? And I kind of want to give a moment, if you don't mind, get in to pass this around and just see what people's thoughts are on that. And I guess I'll start with you, Gideon.
Okay. So when it comes to principles, I think, it's kind of like, I think about like investment managers and fund managers, and like, at a most basic level is like risk and return is like a key thing. Look at people who are doing portfolio management, getting that, that lever and the right combo of those two. I think, there's like markets, like some will be like small cap, large cap, international, that kind of thing. So there's probably some equivalent to that. That's like the instruments that laid out in the document. I personally think that we've worked so hard to raise these, that we kind of function as like a little bit like a foundation, or like what's it called, that a school has, like a university has an endowment. It's like they work so hard to build up that cash. They have to be super careful to not squander it and not lose it by being too aggressive in their strategy. So I would say that there's like, for me, there's like an element of like just conservative. So I'll stop there, and I will pass it to Gene.
Thanks, Gideon. Yeah, the word that comes to mind is just responsibility. And Gideon mentioned in one of the aspects earlier about the concept of fiduciary, and that's really just what kind of resonates here, is the responsibility and the care for watching these funds for. Yeah, that's the principle I would think of first. And pass to Antti.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say there's two parts to all of these. I guess the first one, as far as how we manage the funds, there's I would agree with Gene, a lot of responsibility and accountability. That's probably what's more important to these. And then as far as the funds themselves, probably sustainability. I guess we should prioritize for sustainable and mid to low risk strategies that that may not bring a lot of revenue back, but we know for certain that we can expect it being sustained, right? So yeah, that's that. I'll pass it over to Richa.
This may have already been included in one of the principles that Nate's listed, perhaps under growth and resiliency, but I think just efficiency is important. So making sure that we're getting the most out of the dollars spent. And then of course, like ease of use and access are important too. So just when groups need the capital, that it is available at like a regular cadence. I think those two could be cool in there. Passing it over to Bergo.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. So yeah, for me, I think I would really resonate with this. What Gene said is responsibility and transparency. I would say, like what Nate was saying, is that doing this kind of treasury management initiatives in a DAO environment I don't think it has been done much. So I don't think there's like a lot of examples of really good experiences doing this in the way we want to do it, that is like decentralized and responsible and not, yes, like focusing on return, but at the end focusing on being sustainable and not just getting crazy with what we're doing. Like we're not like a VC, or like our main goal is not like investments. So like, just like finding the right measure to be able to do this aligned to what the TC is doing as well. So I think that's where responsibility comes and transparency becomes a crucial aspect for this to be successful. I'll pass it to CryptoSec.
Hey, yeah, I also think that responsibility for the funds is a big one. I think representation of the wills or desires of the token holders is also a really big one, and maybe not like in the form of like direct democracy, where every token holder must vote on every area of the budget every time, but instead maybe indirect democracy, where the token holders elect fund managers to distribute and budget out funds in the most efficient way possible. Yeah, I think the representation should be a big consideration as well. I pass it to.
If that is everybody.
You gone yet?
Empty go? Did you go empty?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's it. And then, I don't know, do I have time for one more open-ended question just to help inform the development of this, Gideon? Okay. The other thing was, if I were to pose a scenario to you, if, say, we have our initial funding proposal for this investment strategy, we implement the investment strategy, everything works out well, and we see the returns beyond what we expected. And say there's an additional $70,000 that we've earned over a 5-month period. What is something that you would be? Where should these funds go? How much of it do you believe should be reinvested? How much do you believe should go to the common pool? I just kind of want to get a little bit of an idea of where people's heads at, of what the purpose of generating these funds are for, and to kind of, I don't know, get a framing of what we should prioritize in terms of conveying these ideas to the community, to the rest of the community. And so I guess if you have an idea on this, just go ahead and unmute, and then we can go from there. If you'd like to pass it around, we can. If somebody just wants to talk about it, we can as well. So I just wanted to ask that one question. So does anybody want to get us started?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think for me, probably is one of the most important ones to be answered, right? Because it's the actual purpose of why we're doing this initiative. So, in my opinion, the way I see it is that we're trying to do this as a complement for trying to make the TEC financially sustainable. Like what I was saying before, this is not like our main focus. It's just like a tool, like an instrument, or some instruments that we're gonna use to make part of the solution of running out of funds. So for me, it's that. Maybe in the future it can also change, right? Maybe the way I see it is that probably, ideally, these funds would be used to invest in more public goods, in more projects to do with token engineering. So we're investing funds that are aligned to what the TEC is doing, for me that would be like a good purpose.
I can say something too. Um, I think we should try to keep and reinvest as much as possible. And I'm not sure, but I'm really not sure how it would look like. But for instance, in the case of the Gnostics DAO or the DAOs that that have big treasuries invested, um, they usually the funding proposal are requested directly to the treasury managers, and so they are the ones that take the money out of the investments or whatever for to fund whatever they choose to fund. And so in our case, I don't know how would that look like, but if we can try to if we could try to make everything in the TEC with the common pool money and just leave the investments for very specific things when they are needed or something. I think that's the ideal scenario, and probably just to keep track and just to cash out on revenue, um, we could send back a percentage each quarter or 2 times a year or something like that.
I'm still pretty new to understanding some of these things, but it feels like if there's table stakes projects that are in the works that need to be done in the near short term, medium term future, I think it's better to reinvest rather than distribute, and then like that can be assessed on an ongoing basis. So maybe that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I'll pile on here. Yeah, I think that there's some kind of combination here of well, first of all, I think reinvesting is like figuring out a way for this capital to accumulate and show the community how that works, right? It's like, if we don't accumulate and it doesn't build on itself, then it's kind of like the whole purpose starts to dissipate and like it loses its power, right? So yeah, that's what capital is for. Like it's really good at like you know building on itself. Um, but maybe there is some way to kind of peel off a portion of it um, to make this compelling. Like actually in the document, Nate had this idea of like using it to fund praise, the reward system, and that might be. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but something like that is tangible. Is I think good. I think one thing that would be kind of a mistake is if we just if there was some portion of this that was peeled off and wasn't allowed to accumulate, and we just dumped it back in the common pool and be like, there's no measurable like impact. Maybe we could report on it and stuff like that, but it just feels like it's just like a kind of like a drop in the bucket. Like especially initially, it's not going to be tons of money, and so I think psychologically, it's important for us to have a signal here, right? Like one signal of growth, like capital growing on itself, and two, actually this is working and there's some benefit that's pouring back to the even if it's just let's see. I'll pass to Gene.
Yeah, thanks, Gideon. I would just say either go ultra conservative or ultra experimental. So or maybe a little slight combination of the two. Maybe find somebody that to start a treasury management account with that does that, like Llama, or so that would be an ultra conservative mechanism. And then maybe on the other side, do some really exotic yield bearing strategy like a personal Yearn Vault or what you were talking about in the document with perpetual protocol, some really long, heavy leverage on some position, but small pieces. I don't know. Either an opportunity to experiment or an opportunity to safely set up a backstop.
Yeah, and just to add on to what everyone has said, yeah, I think it's important to consider the compound interest, right? I think that's a key thing on investments. So definitely something we should be looking to get. And also something I remember also from Nate's document, this idea of governance swaps with other DAOs. I think that's also really powerful and really interesting for us to experiment with, because then you are not just looking into increasing your capital gains, but also your social gains, right? Your relationships with other organizations through investing in them, and them investing in the TEC, right? So it's like win-win for everyone. So I think that's a really novel approach that this space could allow us. So yeah, pass it back to you, Nate.
I wanted to add something really quick. I think that's something that could be made, or at least think about, is making the treasury management itself sustainable. So I guess, so like setting priorities to cash on the investments. And so before thinking about returning to the common pool, maybe we can think about first making it sustainable enough that we can pay off the salaries of whoever is working on the treasury management. And then if there's enough excess of revenue, of income generation, then we can think about funding praise or sending back to the common pool.
Yeah, the operations is one of those things that it's tough to balance in terms of just relying on the common pool for these initiatives, and hopefully those problems are solved with increased volume into the ABC with the token utility being created. But these things are far off, and so when conveying to the community at this point in time, we have some members who are looking at this as being like, hey, this is gonna get us out of a hole and keep us, propel us forward very quickly. And it's like, well, we need to learn how to manage those expectations and making sure that we convey this message properly within the policy document, and then execute on everything that we said we were going to execute, like Gideon said before. And so I think these steps of gaining trust with the community by doing what we said we're going to do, and kind of tampering down the expectations and making sure that everybody understands what is ahead of us, because this is not an easy thing to accomplish. It really isn't. The more I've researched it and gone into how other DAOs are doing it, it's basically a copy paste job, and nobody's really explored the methods of how to do this in a decentralized way. And I think this is something that we should adhere ourselves to really set this kind of model up for other DAOs to utilize. And when we do that, we have to really set infinite time horizon. Let's build this infrastructure piece by piece and get it done correctly, and don't try to rush things. And so I want to thank Gideon for reminding me of that. But we are getting at the top of the hour, so I want to pass this back to Gideon. If you have any more comments, please enter it into the document. I'm going to be working on it this week, so thank you.
Thanks, Nate. I want to just take a moment to say, thank you to you, Nate, for if you weren't doing this would not be getting done right now, and you're doing a great job. Like, the document itself is just so well thought through. There's some of this stuff, there were a couple of them I was like, wow, I got to go look that up, right? So you're really digging in, and I love it. And I think I think you're right. This has the potential to be kind of like an inspiring thing that could actually help other DAOs. So that's it for the call. Just really quickly, next week we're going to. I'm hoping that Tam will be able to kind of go into a little bit more details on the next steps on the consulting intake for the token engineering demand board, particularly around the partnerships. I think that Rex is going to give us an update on the accounting spreadsheet, like where things are going with that. And then last week I did kind of an overview of income generation. I want to do a follow-up on that. I've been thinking a lot about that and how we think about kind of the economic layer of this commons, right? And how we start to build economic policy that can, so what do we do if there's a working group that is formed here and it was formed based on our funding? What is that? What obligations does that does that open up? And how do we manage that? So love to get your feedback on some of that next week. So that's next week's. And if you have other suggestions for next week, just put them right there at the bottom of this agenda in the next, as a bullet there. Okay, that's it. We're at the top of the hour. We're 1 minute over, damn it. So we'll say goodbye. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks, Gideon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Next
everyone.
video. Thanks everyone. Take care.